Mark and Shayna watched the popular girls glide down the hall, chatting and giggling. One girl in particular stood out even among that flock, perfect and completely aware of it. Cecilia wore her pale blonde hair in a long ponytail that gently slapped against her bare upper back, not a single hair amiss. Her tight top plunged to show off deep cleavage that bounced steadily despite a partially exposed bra's best efforts. The torso beneath gently curved inwards before flaring out to support a pair of low-rise jeans, with the hem of a black thong and a smidgen of midriff visible above just shy of too much hips and butt. A skirt barely adhered to the school's dress code for length, showing off long legs that topped slim feet in short-heeled sandals, the exposed toenails painted pastel. Her breathtaking face, only slightly marred by overused makeup, acknowledged the pair of losers barely long enough to dismiss them, big blue eyes just visibly darting to the side and pouty lips turning up at the corners. If she registered Mark's wide-eyed stare or Shayna's humorless smile, she didn't show it. Such lesser beings were beneath her, whether they offered worship and contempt. Mark watched the school's queen and her entourage disappear behind a corner. No matter how many times he saw her, he couldn't believe she was real. "Impressed?" Shayna asked, startling Mark. Her expression had turned to satisfaction. "I can't take all the credit. To be honest, I can hardly believe he had her in him." Mark tried to steady himself. Short and weedy, he'd been afraid of Shayna even before Cecilia came to be. He'd thought of her as an ally on principle, a fellow outcast, but not someone he'd ever befriend. Gaunt and pale with long black hair and a permanent scowl, Shayna was rumored to be a witch, a once beautiful girl who lost her mind, a murderer, or all three. She'd transferred to his high school at the start of year, but hadn't become any less mysterious as the quarters passed. Mark heard somewhere that she sometimes helped her fellow outsiders. No one could ever recall her doing anything notable, but the idea seemed universally accepted. Off to college and still bullied like a child, Mark had worked up his nerve on the grounds that it couldn't hurt to ask. He told Shayna how Steve Martins, a tubby classmate with greasy blonde hair and a singularly cruel mind, made his life miserable, and how he just wanted some peace during his last month here. She cheerfully offered her assistance, saying she'd make sure Steve would never so much as acknowledge him again. That had been Friday. Mark didn't see Steve before school started the following Monday, nor was he at lunch, the usual preferred time for intimidation and humiliation. He wasn't there when Mark took his seat during the next period, math, the one actual class the pair shared. In fact, the whole classroom looked wrong. Nate Johnson was in Steve's usual seat, and the rest of the students were shuffled around until the only open desk was in the back, where the popular girls sat. As the bell rang, a stunning blonde he'd never seen sauntered in through the door, absent-mindedly wiping her lips. She took the empty desk, and Mark stared until she gave him a look to wither a tree. He saw other guys risking subdued glances at the new girl's chest, but none dwelled or gave any impression of surprise. When roll was called, she responded to the name Cecilia Martins. The name burrowed in Mark's mind. After class he asked Nate if that was Steve's cousin, and received only a confused look in response. He repeated the name, Steve Martins, and Nate asked that was Cecilia's brother or something. Mark told him to forget about it, and spent the rest of the day looking for any signs of his former nemesis, finding none. The next day he noticed Cecilia on the lawn before school, then in his lunch period, and again in math, but at no point did she so much as look at him. By now the rumors of witchcraft had started running wild through his head. Steve, and now he was certain that girl was Steve, whatever he looked or acted like, no matter how impossible that was, had walked by just as Mark was finally about to confront Shayna. He wasn't sure what to say in the wake of the witch's open acceptance of her work. He'd expected a fight, or at least denial. "Mark, you there?" "I asked if you were impressed," Shayna said. She looked unnervingly relaxed, as though making a guy into a girl was just a bit of everyday work. "Come on, man. Give me some feedback." "I just wanted him to leave me alone," Mark said. His cowardice told him to leave now, thank her and move on, but he couldn't budge. Fear and shame had coagulated into something resembling courage, sturdy enough that it wouldn't dissolve no matter how much he wished it would. This was fucked up, bad enough that his conscience wouldn't let him abandon even his worst enemy. Shayna gave a small, mean-spirited laugh. Oh, she'll leave you alone, just like I promised. She's too busy fucking the football team to care about some pointless nerd. I doubt she even knows your name anymore. How could she be so casual? Mark could still barely believe what was happening, and Shayna was acting like she'd helped him with some homework. I didn't ask you to make him a girl. If you could do that, you could probably have done lots of other stuff. Less drastic stuff. You don't think it's an improvement? True, she's not any more pleasant as a person, but at least you have something to look at now. A tinge of annoyance slipped through Shayna's mask of calm, and she gestured for Mark to leave. Anyway, what's done is done. If you're not gonna thank me, you don't have anything worth saying. Her stare seemed to burn, and Mark averted his eyes, willing himself to leave. He couldn't. Steve wasn't worth it, in any sense, but no one deserved. Whatever this was. I thought you were helping me. I just wanted him to go away. He spoke without conviction or looking back up, and didn't see Shayna's expression curdling into exasperation. Look. I have plans for this place, and a solution for your problem fit them. Her voice was too soft, and carried an edge that promised murder on the horizon. You don't like my help, fine, but it's not like it cost you anything. You don't get to complain. Just walk away. Properly terrified, Mark began babbling, unable to lift his eyes for fear of what he might see. This isn't a solution. It's like something from a nightmare. You stole his life. Just change him back, okay? I won't bother you again. You won't bother me now, if you're smart. Enjoy your bully-free semester, don't ever talk to me again, and everything will be great. You don't want to piss me off. Mark, stuck in a loop of fear and regret, continued without thinking. I don't, but what about Steve? His pants felt tight and his boxers fit oddly, hanging at the waist but bunching up noticeably around his hips. His stance felt uncomfortable, too. He nervously readjusted to steady himself, finally looking up as he did so, forcing himself to meet the witch's eyes. What about Steve? He doesn't exist anymore. Cecilia is who that is now, who she's always been. Walk away now. I shouldn't even be giving you this chance. Shayna's voice was almost as sharp as her stare. Mark's internal organs were performing acrobatics, and his flesh was crawling, bad enough to make him stutter. Then a sudden surge of self-righteous anger blossomed, breaking the paralysis, filling him with rage. I don't care. Change him back, Mark said, stepping forward and pushing Shayna against a locker. Taken by surprise, she stumbled back and hit the cheap metal with a strangely satisfying thud, but the movement behind the action felt wrong, like his center of gravity was off. Mark, equally confused but strangely satisfied, pushed back loose strands of hair and took a confident step forward. Fear was being replaced by growing fury, which stemmed from disbelief that anyone would dare talk to him like this. The witch took several long moments to regain her poise, and when she did her look was one of pure teenage spite. You know what? I really don't like you. Never have. Most people I help are put upon, misunderstood, troubled. You're just a whiny brat. You and the Martins bitch deserve each other. Mark snorted. Oh, go fuck yourself. Why should I care what some crazy bitch thinks? It felt good to speak his mind. Why had he always been so cautious? Why had he wanted to be invisible? Mark felt angry and justified, which made it easy to ignore the cramps and pressure he felt all over his body. Cecilia's a dick, yeah, but this is fucking busted. The hate on Shayna's face became an unpleasant grin, and she reached for Mark's chest. Couldn't have put it better myself, she said as she grabbed his left nipple and tweaked it hard, pulling it away, easily stretching the sensitive skin far beyond what should have been its limits. Mark gritted his teeth and hissed as pain shot through him, almost as bad as if he'd been kicked in the balls. He slapped away Shayna's hand, and his breast bounced slightly. It drooped back into a cone-like teardrop under his shirt. Mark was now acutely aware of a slight but rapidly expanding weight behind the sore nipple as he tried to soothe it, how the nipple itself grew noticeably larger and harder under his thumb and forefinger, and how rubbing it felt good beneath the pain. He instinctively reached in his low neckline to stuff his tit back in his bra, and fear returned, slicing through newfound confidence. "What are you doing to me?" Mark knew the answer. He could hear it in his voice, higher and more pleasant than his old wine. He could taste it on his pouty lips, the slight sweetness of the flavored gloss they now wore. He could smell it on his hair, the scent of the shampoo and conditioner on long brown locks. He could feel it in his pants, his legs and hips and ass encased in form-fitting denim, but no discomfort up front. He'd seen it a minute earlier, when Cecilia had walked past. Karen knew the answer, but he wanted to hear it from Shayna. No one treated him like this. "You shouldn't have bothered me. I was going to leave you alone." Shayna's cool mask hadn't quite returned, but seeing Karen upset seemed to disguise her agitation. "All I did was decide I'm not leaving annoying bitches on both ends of the social ladder." Yes, he was at the top now, wasn't he? Deserved it, too. Karen was no longer surprised by the two soft yet stiff cups holding up his sizable breasts, helping them peer out of his shirt. He was angry, but he wanted to look like this, to be absolutely beautiful, and for everyone to know it. If he was still just a little scared, it was only because it had been done without his permission. Mark realized he'd been thinking of himself as Karen, and his acceptance was cut short just as he felt his crotch split apart between the legs. With a soft mule he reached both hands down at his tight jeans, grasping at nothing, feeling his arms push his breasts together and his fingers brush against the mound where his masculinity had been. "You always wanted to touch one of those, didn't you? Well, now you can as often as you like." Fear and anger and arrogance mixed as Mark shot a narrowed gaze at Shayna, slowly removing his hands. "Don't worry, guys are gonna be lining up to give you a hand now. Or, more accurately, for you to give them one." Mark sniffed through his upturned nose. He was known for his blowjobs, not his hand jobs, thank you much. Not that a weirdo like Shayna had ever so much as touched a guy's dick. Mark didn't catch himself again until he was already remembering the taste of semen, salty and strangely appealing. Even afterward she knew it was silly that her friends all thought swallowing was gross. Protein was protein. Karen felt sick. The idea of sex with guys shouldn't sound so appealing, not matter how good they felt when they licked her tits or pussy, or how much she loved returning the favor. As great as this was, she deserved what she wanted, even if what she wanted was being whoever she'd been before. "Change me back to who I was," Karen said. She wanted to invoke her old name, but couldn't remember it. No matter. Someone as great as her had no doubt been just as awesome as a guy. "Sorry, babe. I overstuffed the football team a bit, so you need to give Cecilia some assistance on that front. I'd hate to make our state champions settle for second-rate pussy." Karen was torn. She knew she was being insulted, but she liked being recognized for her talents. She couldn't remember why having her hot, tight pussy mentioned was an insult, but knew it was. "By the way, say hello to Brian Post for me. She asked me to make her popular back when she was head of chess club, and he's really been knocking it out of the park as captain." Brian? Had that fucking stud really been a girl? There was nothing feminine about those cliff-like abs, let alone that monster of a cock. Karen felt a bit gooey as she remembered sliding up and down that pole, gently at first, then ramming down into it, stretching herself out beyond belief. Forget fellatio or cunnilingus, that was the real deal. God, what she'd give for Brian to dump Becky. She'd swear off all the other boys forever for just one more ride. Mark caught herself, her name shocked back into memory. Not who she'd been, no, but it was something. She knew she'd been someone else, even if she couldn't remember just how or why she'd want to go back to being them. Well, she could think of one reason: no one forced Karen Bennett to do anything, not even a witch. You made me a slut, she said, thinking of all the guys she'd known in various levels of intimacy. Great memories and no regrets, but that was beside the point. Sounding angry helped get her way. I don't care who I was, change me back. Shayna's face was unbearable smug. Oh, stop being so dramatic. Unlike Cecilia, you're manipulative enough to hide your libido. She resents that, of course, but that's the pretty ones for you. Always jockeying to be queen bee. The bitch had a point. She had all the pleasures of sleeping around without any of the problems. Pity Cecilia wasn't quick-witted enough to keep up, but her taking heat helped keep Karen's reputation sterling. Still, she was compelled to speak. I don't want to be a queen bee. I want to be me, she said. She struggled to remember what me meant, exactly, but the reason lay beyond her grasp. Don't sweat it, you're just a moment away from not caring ever again, Shayna said, looking around the corner. She leaned back and waved curtly. Unpleasant knowing you, Mark. Karen was about to demand to know who Mark was when a familiar voice asked, What are you doing with this freak? Karen looked over at Cecilia, who had just rounded the corner. The rest of their entourage stood a good distance away, whispering and looking over. Karen frowned and shifted back to Shayna, hoping the weirdo would have a good answer. I don't really remember. Why was I talking to you, anyway? Shayna shrugged, making no effort to explain. Bitch, Karen thought. Cecilia sighed impatiently. Fuck it, car, let's just go. The guys are waiting outside. We'll sort out your brain problems later. Karen nodded, still unsure of what she was doing there. Her left nipple throbbed slightly, but she couldn't remember why. Yeah, sure, she said, before putting on a smile for Shayna she hoped looked real. A little politeness went a long way, especially among the geeks, even when they were being their usual bizarre selves. Unlike Cecilia, she strived to be universally loved. Later, Shayna. Shayna waved disingenuously. Try not to choke on any cocks. Karen choked as her fake smile turned to honest rage. Oh, fuck you. Come on Cece, let the ugly cunt talk to herself, she said through clenched teeth. It was a good reminder that politeness only went so far. The pair left quickly, giving them a few seconds to speak before the rest of the girls caught up. Seriously, Car, why were you talking with that weirdo? Cecilia asked. Stuck-up dirty bitch. Karen shrugged. I really don't know. Probably called me over for some reason and I zoned out when she started talking crazy on me. You know what Moon Goddess is like. Cecilia sighed. You're too nice, Car. You gotta learn to leave the losers alone. Especially don't let that freak push you around, she might cast a spell or something. Seriously? You believe in that witch shit? Karen stopped and stared at her friend incredulously. If anyone knows magic it'd be that creep, Cecilia said as the rest of their friends caught up. Bet she ate Satan's asshole to learn it. She laughed, and the others joined her, but Karen just felt a bit cold. The odd mood didn't last long. Brian practically threw himself at Becky as the group stepped outside, which made Karen jealous, but then Luke and Christian pulled her aside. They wanted to step up their game before college, and hoped she'd be interested in a threesome Friday night. Karen laughed, and told those silly, inexperienced boys she'd be happy to help, provided they treated her right. The only question was who would go between her lips and who would go between her thighs.